Thank you for joining us today. On today's program, I invited a mineral dealer that I saw online doing something a little bit different. He's a mineral dealer. He and his wife, they're mineral dealers, but they started a new side business in that mineral world, creating bases. That may not seem like something really cutting edge, but the thing that really caught my eye was the fact that these are custom made 3D printed bases. And the start of that begins with something as simple as sand. So please welcome Brian Greenstone to the show. Brian, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Brian.
Well, thank you for coming on. The second I started watching your plugging into your Facebook feed and seeing you presenting these new 3D bases in matte black blew me away. It immediately grabbed my attention. How'd you come up with this idea?
Well, I actually had the idea probably 6 or 7 years ago when we first started in the mineral business. And it's actually, these bases are one of the reasons why the company name is Greenstone Fine Mineralia instead of fine minerals, because when we started off, our intent wasn't so much selling the rocks, it was selling stuff for it. So back in the day, we were making lighted display cases. We did that for several years. And our intent was also to make 3D printed bases. I kind of had this idea of doing that. The problem was 6, 7 years ago, the technology just wasn't there. The quality wasn't very good, and the cost of printing a 3D base 6 years ago was more than just having an acrylic one base. So we backburnered it, but there was a big change, a big improvement in 3D printing technology last year, and that's what made this affordable and easier to do. And so we picked it back up, and it worked, and so now we're doing them.
I absolutely love it. And I know that a lot of your background is from the video game industry, and that helped with the creation of the bases here. Explain real quickly how the two are related there.
Right. So, well, in the video game industry, obviously, we do a lot of 3D modeling for all the 3D video games. And so 35 years of experience, or actually probably more than that, of using 3D modelers came in really helpful, because when you're doing any kind of 3D printing, you have to do it all, in a 3D modeling program. And while doing the bases isn't as complicated as making a 3D character in a video game, it uses a lot of that same knowledge and know-how. And so it made it a whole lot easier to just jump right in and be able to model these things.
Well, that's fantastic. Let me start showing the viewers what we're talking about when we're talking about bases here. This is one of the bases that you created. And as the viewers can see, it is a matte black plastic base with the label information raised from the surface of the front of the base. And here we have a beautiful rhodochrosite that's fitting perfectly in it. Makes it look fantastic. Here's another one, wonderful fluorite, sphalerite that you did. This is from Illinois, of course. And in addition to just having the sans serif type like we see here, you're also able to put serif types in there. So it really depends on what the collector wants and what they prefer. And just absolutely wonderful, fully customizable. The other neat thing about this is if we go back to this previous image, you could see that the color of the lettering is white or silver, possibly. I can't, or maybe it's a gray. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's, it's a very standard color as you would expect. But you can also alter that color, and you could make it so that it more closely matches the specimen like you have here in this pyrite, and of course here in this goethite. These are just absolutely wonderful. I think just visually, they're so interesting. It's nice to have, I always like seeing new things come along that maybe change the way that we perceive things. And we're so familiar with those lucite bases that we've had everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with them, but the fact that we have something different here, I think really brings something new to the market. And to be able to create something where you have more contrast between, like in this example, this beautifully delicate Moroccan barite, to create more contrast between the specimen and the base, to me actually pulls the eye towards the specimen more. And you can actually do quite large sizes. Tell me again, what is the size of this piece here?
I think that one was roughly about 18 centimeters wide by maybe 7 or 8, or maybe 8 deep. The maximum size that we can do safely is about 18 wide by 10 deep. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there. 3D printer is actually capable of printing a little bit larger, but we need a margin around it because there's some support structures and some other stuff that gets in the way. But that's roughly at about 18 centimeters by 10 is more or less the largest we can do for now.
Well, that's great. You can do fairly large pieces, and you can also go very small. Here's a fabulous Brazilian specimen with some lepidolite on the side of it, and you're able to custom design a base that actually, again, brings more attention to the actual specimen there. In addition to just those, you're able to do kind of what we call, I guess, the pedestal bases here, which again is a completely different way of highlighting maybe some of the smaller pieces. And I love this. I love seeing new things on the market that really elevate the presentation of minerals. I think this is a wonderful job. And I also looked online and saw that you have kind of more amorphic bases that you can customize towards the different specimens. So we're not just stuck with the rhombic shape that we're used to seeing. And again, this almost feels more like what you'd see in China, where they take fabulous pieces of wood and kind of carve it around important pieces so that it flows more with the piece, and the base and the piece together are presented as one united piece of art. I mean, I love that. How'd you come up with this idea of kind of going a little bit more custom?
Well, I think originally when I started coming up with this idea, that was my goal, was to do more than just the rectangular base, give something more of an organic look to it. And when I was first experimenting with this, like all these photos you've shown, those are, early prototypes basically that we did very early on to see what kind of pedestals can we build. But we kind of found that customer-wise, they still want the rectangle. So that's pretty much, all of what we build. But we can do the pedestals, and it gives us a whole lot of flexibility because, the pedestals, unlike the rectangles, we can shape them however we want, and we can do a lot of customizations to it. The one with the Amazonite in it, I call that the soft-boiled egg holder because that's kind of what it looked like. That one was just a completely random idea I had. I said, what if I just make this bizarre organic shape? And, there was nowhere to put the text on the organic part of the base, so I had to put this little plaque that was built into it on there. And it was just a random experiment that I ran. And it just proved to us that we could essentially build anything that somebody could come up with. There's certain limits, but generally speaking, we can do those. But, like I say, most people still just want the rectangles, even though, we can do anything.
Well, I love the fact that you're also open to the idea of working with the specimen owners to basically fulfill whatever their vision is. That's a very unique business proposition these days.
Yeah, we actually work pretty closely with most of the customers because there is a little bit of a learning curve to getting the whole thing right for us. Because they're not sending us the specimen; they're doing some of the work on their end, and then we model it here. And most customers get it right the first time, but there are a few that need a little hand holding. So we like to work with them, and especially there are certain special case specimens that they want our advice on how best to position it or how best to make the mold and stuff like that. So there's a lot of going back and forth with customers.
Well, you're touching on a very important point where you say that the customers don't have to send the pieces to you. And we're going to get right back to that in 1 second. But first, what I want to do is I also want to kind of show that black isn't the only option. It's not like the early Fords where you could have any color you want as long as it's black. You also have a white. And here, this white with this azurite, I think just is a stunning presentation. And here's another great example of rose quartz on a white base. And this kind of also brings to mind or brings to the vision something else that's pretty important, which is this thing in the back there, which is an added support. We've always seen the dowels or the sprues in the lucite bases, but here you've incorporated it also into one of the features that you offer in your bases. And here is another example where from the front, it looks almost like it's floating, like it's unencumbered. But if you rotate it to the back there, you can see that there is a support there to ensure that it doesn't fall over. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think we're gonna see more about that when we get into the actual production of how you do this. But it can also, in this example, it can be something that sits on top of the base so that you don't have to lose a significant portion of the specimen into the base just to make it sturdy. So that little thing in the bottom left there of this beautiful Kongan malachite is what really steadies it. And that's all just part of what you've created here.
And what's probably worth mentioning about those supports too is that in reality, when you see these, in person, those supports disappear because it's a matte black finish. And they are more visible in the photos because I'm using very bright studio light, so it kind of turns it gray. But when we have these specimens in our display case, you don't see those supports. It's just matte black against matte black, and it just disappears.
Well, I know that's an increasing trend that I see in the display cases where, and I think even Danny Tronchillo talked about it when we did an interview with him for What's Hot in Tucson 2021, how the black inside of the cases is actually becoming more and more popular than ever right now. So your point is
I love those cases with the black background. I think the colors just pop.
Yeah, it absolutely pops. I mean, here's another great example of a piece that you did where it really does disappear into the background. The specimen just pops. And again, like I said earlier, the base serves the specimen, nothing else. With a lucite, again, lucite's beautiful, and I love the lucite bases, but this, it creates a little bit more separation between the specimen and the base. And I look at this and I think of the crouching lion, and I know that you've called this the lion or the poodle, but this reminds me of a rock formation here on Oahu that overlooks the ocean, kind of on the east side, and it's called the Crouching Lion, and it looks exactly like this. So the second I saw this, I said, "Oh yeah, brah, Crouching Lion, yeah." And speaking of Hawaii, when I saw this and I had the idea that I wanted to bring you on the show, I offered to pay for a few bases, and in full disclosure, you said, no, let me do this for you complimentary. So I took 4 of my specimens and you created these bases for me. And so this is a pyromorphite from China that I had in my, I hesitate to call it a collection, but among the pieces that I have here. And this is your classic pedestal base. And then you did for me this new dioptase that is newly found out in the Congo, and beautiful fit there. Of course, I took the queen mine tourmaline that I had, and this is a fairly good sized piece. From the top of the base to the top of that upper crystal, it's about 4.5 inches or 12 centimeters. So you kind of get an idea, that it can handle pretty fair-sized pieces. And it's a lock fit. I mean, it's in there, solid as can be. Absolutely have 100% confidence in the security of the piece. And then I sent you a imprint of a sulfur that was from the Big Island here, the Kilauea volcano, and it holds that very steady. And what I'm going to do here is the next thing is I have a video that I'm going to play that goes back to the pedestal piece, and it really shows how secure this is. So let me go ahead and play that right now. Okay, so this is my little pyromorphite in the new base from Brian Greenstone, and I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to kind of shake it back and forth a little bit, just to show people how secure that is. I'm really happy with these bases. And there it is again, and it just fits perfectly in there. And the base is hollow extremely lightweight. And this is a specialized one. That's the pedestal, but very, very cool process here. And hang on for a second, I'll grab the, sorry about that, but I just realized that I still had this. This was the original mold that I used for this piece. And taking the photographs of that, sent them over to Brian, and he was able to create that. And it is just, it's a perfect lock fit. So great new service. I love these little bases. Fantastic. So that's kind of what it looks like, and that hinted a little bit about what I want to talk about next, which is going back to sand. How does this work? Tell us a little bit about the sand that you're recommending people to use, and what type of sand or what color works best.
Right. So, originally we were thinking about using impression foam, which is what most base makers use, right? It's the kind of stuff you use at the foot doctor, that the foot in there. And it's great for making molds, but the problem is it's not reusable. And there are a few other issues with it. So I knew for a long time that this stuff might work really well. It's kinetic sand. You can get it at pretty much any toy store or craft store. So like Target, Walmart, Michael's, any of those kinds of places have this stuff. Of course, you get on Amazon. It's like $13 for a big bag, and I've never needed more than one bag to do any of these molds. And what's great about it is not only is it reusable, but it is what allows you to build the back supports. Because if you do use the impression foam, there's no way to do a back support out of impression foam. All you do is pushing it into foam. But with the sand, you can kind of sculpt whatever you need. And with our process, whatever you sculpt or whatever you impress and make a mold into, we will be able to create a very, very accurate and very detailed 3D scan of it. And by detailed, I know this number may not mean anything to most people, but some of the scans we make of these molds come out to 20 million polygons. For those in the know, that's a massively high resolution scan. We actually have to knock that down because it's too much for the computer to handle, or the software kind of blows up at that. But so the resulting bases, we usually knock them down to around 700 or 600,000 polygons so that we can work with it. And that's still sub-millimeter accurate detail level. But that's what's great about the sand. It's cheap, it's easy, it's reusable. If you screw up the mold, you just flatten it out and start again. So we love it.
Well, you're exactly right. And you have excellent videos on your website that will show at the end of this interview that gives very, very detailed information. I didn't have to contact you for any instructions. I just watched that video and immediately I got it. Even out here in Hawaii, I was able to go to my local Target and pick up this bag of sand. So if you're not near a Target or a Walmart or a Michael's or any of these other places, Amazon also has it. So very, very easy for people in the US to go ahead and get that. And what I'd like to do is kind of jump over here to actually this shot. And these are the bases that I showed earlier in the photographs. And you could see how this works. And actually, let me show this one first, because this is actually interesting. This is actually the sand mold that I used when I imprinted this pyromorphite, and took a bunch of pictures of this, sent it to you, and whoops, actually, here's the piece that I got. Now, it didn't come green. I've since painted it green because I'm doing some special effect filming with it. And this is the chroma green that disappears on camera. But let's see, how does that align? Maybe like that or that. But basically, you took photographs that I sent you from this, which is, this is the Kinetic Sand, and you were able to print this out. And it works perfectly. Exact same process. Like you said, exact same sand that I used to create these other ones. And here's the dioptase, and it just lock fits like that. And it's quite sturdy, just like I showed in the other video. Yeah. And to me, go ahead.
I was going to say, what just makes it so good is that, the key to our whole process is that nobody ever has to send us anything. We don't need
Absolutely.
the specimen. We don't need the mold. All they do is they just basically upload a bunch of photos, and from those photos, we're able to do the entire thing.
And that's amazing. And here's a great example of where when I put this in the sand, it kept flopping over. So I had to build a little berm behind it. And when you look at it from the display side, you don't see anything, even, from pretty severe angles, but it's there and it's resting right on the back of this, and it's wonderful. And to me, the amazing thing, and I didn't even realize this until I received it, is probably easiest to show on this one. This is the one with the Queen Mine tourmaline, which I have downstairs in the vault. I didn't bring it up, but when you flip it over, this is so extremely lightweight. You have these felt feet in all the corners so that it makes a very nice contact, and it's not going to scratch anything or damage the base or any surface that it's upon. But I was amazed at how lightweight these were. When I first opened it, I was a bit skeptical because it was so lightweight. But once I put the pieces in, they all seem to fit pretty darn well there. So good job, man. Really excellent.
Thanks. Yeah, I was surprised too at how lightweight those came out, because the resin that we use the density is actually more than water. I mean, it's about 10% heavier by volume than water. So I just kind of assumed, even though it's hollow, it would have more weight, but they weigh nothing. We've shipped some of these off to customers. I put 3 of them in a box. It still weighs less than a pound with the box and all the backing material. It's just, it saves on everything.
And I have to add that your packing of these things, fantastic. Oh my God. I've saved a lot of that great packing material for reuse, but incredibly well packed, no problem. Shipping it from Austin, Texas, where you're based, all the way over to Honolulu, Hawaii. It arrived quickly, no damage, easy. Great job.
Thanks. Yeah, our whole goal, from the beginning with this was to make it easy and cheap, right? I mean, the problem we always had with mineral bases was just that it could take a long time to get the bases back, and we'd have to send the rock off, and we kind of wanted to solve that problem. And this was really the best solution that we could come up with, because we've got customers now that, if we're not working on any other bases that day, they literally send those files over, the photos, and they have a base sent to them in the mail the very next day. The turnaround time is nothing, and they never have to, have their specimen out of their possession.
That is such a huge advantage. And to that point, what I actually want to do is I want to show people what the process is. And you cover this again beautifully in your video, but I just want to share people. So here we are. This was in my studio. I have the Kinetic Sand in the background, and I filled up one of the larger specimen boxes. And in your video, what you do is you show how you could take photographs walking around the piece on the table. I don't have a situation. All my shooting tables are up against walls, or they have lights all over them. So it's not easy for me to walk around it. So what I did is I rotated the box instead, and I kept the camera in basically one place, and I used an iPhone to take photographs of it. But one trick I'll tell people that, and we weren't sure if it was going to work, but it actually worked out well, is you can see that the box here is sitting in front of the ruler, and they're both sitting on a black piece of foam core. It doesn't have to be black. It could be on anything. But what I did is, instead of rotating the box, I rotated that piece of foam core so that the box and the ruler moved together. And that ruler is an important part for the computer to figure out all the measurements and the angles and complicated stuff I'm not even going to get into. But basically, the process here is you have this set up. You put your mineral into the sand, you push it down so that you get it to the angle that you want to present it in. And then you lift it up and you take it in and out a few times just to kind of pack that sand in. And then you draw these lines that you can see there to kind of show you roughly where the important area is that you want to focus in. And then in this case, I took the piece out, and there's the imprint. And I did 3 photographs, one from kind of a bird's eye, one a little bit further down, and one even more a little bit further down. So I did 3 photographs, And then I would rotate it just a little bit, and I'd do 3 more. And you recommend that people do minimum, I think, of 40 photographs. I ended up going a little bit overboard. I think I sent you about 70 photographs for each one. But in the end, that imprint gave us something that is basically exactly that. And let's see if I can, I'm trying to see if I could line these up so that they're roughly in the same spot. And I think that's it right there.
And the amazing thing is that the 3D scanner will pick up, impressions in the sand that you can't even see with your own eye, because it'll detect 1 grain of sand out of whack. It picks up everything. And part of the process that we have on our end is, because it's picking up literally every piece of sand, we have to kind of shave off that top layer, because we don't want the top of your base to be all grainy and wavy. So we just digitally crop it in order to, because it's just too much detail.
And then, Brian, there's one feature that we didn't really talk about in our pre-interview, but there is on the back of this, there's what I'm guessing is your company logo, and there's a number. And so I'm assuming that is a database that you keep on each base. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Right. So, we've done about 30 customer bases so far. We probably have done about 100 bases total, but majority of those were just for our own in-house use. And I don't serialize the in-house ones, because honestly, it's just too difficult to keep track of it. But so each of the customer ones are serialized, and we keep all of the original 3D files. So if a base ever gets damaged, lost, or maybe you screwed up the locality and you need us to change the locality, it's not a problem. We just go back, reprint it, and voila. So we've got everything on file, and we can always make another base pretty much right away.
God, that's fantastic. Now, Brian, I know that you have some imagery that you'd like to share with us of the actual software interface, so that we can see what the contours look like after your computer has processed all the photographs.
Right. So here is, if you can see that, this is basically what the base looks like in the 3D model. And you can see right here the number of polygons, the detail of the 3D model is pretty insane. And this is kind of a worst case scenario here, where the impression was ridiculously complicated. I mean, it looks like the crater of the moon. But regardless of that, this specimen, this was for a large azurite, it went right into this base when we printed it. I mean, it was an absolutely perfect 100% glove tight fit. And so this really shows, the level of detail we're able to get from the 3D scanning that we're doing and the 3D printing. Our printers will do 50 micron resolution, which is about 1/20th of a millimeter. So that's the resolution that we get. And it's probably overkill. We don't even need that level of resolution, but it's what it does. And the scanner probably does even higher resolution than that.
That is simply amazing. I mean, I love technology, and this is just fantastic. I mean, really great job.
Thanks.
Brian, talk to us quickly about pricing on these compared to lucite bases, to other bases. What are we looking at?
So my goal when I started this was, I said, I have got to get the entry level base $35. That was my goal. And we managed to accomplish doing that. So the price basically ranges from about $35 for, say, a 3/4 inch high base that's about that big, to the full size base, which I think maxes out at, I'm trying to remember, $80 or $85. It depends a lot on the height. So the width and depth, that kind of determines some degree of the pricing, but also the thicker the base is, because that determines how long it takes to print. So one of the small little bases might only take 2.5, 3 hours to print on the 3D printer, whereas the big ones can be up to 7 hours or longer to print those humongous ones. So it's all size based, but even at the maximum size, it's still half or maybe even less than half of the cost of an acrylic base. But the average base that we've been doing for customers has been $45. That's pretty much the average cost because most people have, say, this size base. This would be an example of probably this is a 1-inch high base with a back support that adds a little bit more height, relatively small base. So this is probably a $45 or $50 base. And that's mostly what we've been doing. And so it's, super affordable. And especially if they have us do a bunch of them, we just do a flat $13 shipping rate. So if they order 20 bases, it's still $13 to ship them. We just put them in a box and off they go.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, it's great customer service, fantastic product, very good price. Again, I thank you for these gifts that you gave me. I was more than happy to pay for them. I think it was very generous that you donated them to Blue Cap Productions. But just wonderful, wonderful product. For those of you watching, you want to check it out for yourself. You can go to the website. It's finemineralia.com, and that's the homepage of the website. I think the third button down on the left-hand side there is custom bases. Just click on there and you will have a link to all the YouTube information so that you can get detailed information on how to do your imprint, information on how you upload the images to Brian, and then there is a form there that you fill out with the size, the shape, the text that you want on there, the color you want for the text. It's an incredible service. Brian, I really wish you the best of luck. I hope to see this many years from now even more successful than it is now.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, for all of you tuning in, thank you. Keep checking back for more updates in the mineral world. And Brian, again, a big mahalo for you. Take care, buddy.